Hello, everyone. Welcome to Commissioner and Carr. Today is Tuesday. It is December 14th. And I forgot to do Commissioner and Carr last week. I was pretty busy with a few election-related tasks, but I'm back. And just in time, because we have some election legislation updates coming for you for New York State. But first, happy holidays, everyone. That might get a little annoying, so I made sure to turn that off. But this is my little fun thing that I have in my car. Yeah, you know what? That is going to get annoying, so I am going to turn it off. But there, you can still see me. We'll put on the regular lights. I miscalculated when I started doing these Commissioner and Cars at night. We're still in Central New York, and we're still very, very dark at around 4:30 to 5 o'clock every day when I'm going to try to do these on Tuesdays from now on. But that being said, we have some exciting news on legislation. I'm also going to touch on redistricting, of course, my constant companion, redistricting here in Onondaga County, and also talk about what's coming up later this week on my social media feeds. But first, the election legislation. Governor Hochul last Thursday has called up 4 bills. Well, they called up a lot of bills, but 4 of them to do with elections. And these are bills I've been waiting on, and because they are actually going to change elections in New York in quite dramatic ways. The first bill, the one that may actually change the elections the most, is a bill dealing with the way we canvass absentee ballots in New York. As you know, New York is one of the only states, I believe the only states, that waits until after Election Day to canvass or count all of our absentee ballots. We're the only state that does this because we have a provision in state law that allows people to go to the polls and vote in person and supplant their absentee ballot vote if they mailed it in. Thus, we can't count their absentee ballot vote until 10 days after Election Day, until we can get the voter history through and make sure that we're not counting their vote twice. This is going to change if Governor Hochul signs this bill, and there's only one reason for her to have called it up on Thursday, and that is to sign it. And I guess I should explain what calling it up means. After the legislature passes a bill, they have to send it to the governor, or the governor has to call it up. And then the governor has 10 days to sign it or veto it. So these bills, these 4 bills I'm talking about, were passed in the last session, which ended in June. However, because the bill can sit dormant until the governor calls it up or the legislature sends it to her, the 10-day clock doesn't start until that the bill is delivered to the governor. And these 4 bills were part of what I imagine is a last-minute flurry of signings that is going to happen to end the year and actually get this flurry of legislation signed. It is possible she will veto these bills, and if in that case, it has to go back to the legislature. But both bills were passed by veto override majorities all 4 bills were passed with veto override majorities in the legislature, so it is more than likely all 4 of these bills are going to pass. So as I said, the first bill is the absentee canvass bill. This will now remove the ability of the voter to supplant their absentee with an election day vote, and what it will do is force boards of elections to start canvassing absentee ballots as they come in on a 4-day rolling basis. So we send out absentee ballots about 42 to 45 days before an election, and as the ballots start to come back, we have to canvass them under this new law within 4 days of receiving them. That means inspect them, decide whether they're valid to be opened, and opened. And of course, campaigns can have observers watching this happen, but it also happens in a bipartisan fashion. This is what most states do. Maybe not in the way that we're going to do it, but most states canvass their absentee ballots as they come in. And so that means that as an absentee ballot is applied for, you will no longer be able to vote in person on Election Day if you apply for an absentee ballot. But you could vote by affidavit on Election Day. Say you didn't get your absentee ballot and it's getting close to the election, you want to go and vote, you can still vote by affidavit ballot, and if you haven't turned in an absentee ballot, it will count. There are some technical rules on how and when those absentee ballots will be opened. For example, during early voting, before early voting starts, those ballots will be opened on a 4-day basis. During early voting, we won't be opening up any ballots, and we'll be waiting until after the early voting period to see if anybody went and voted early, and then we would remove them from the pool of absentee ballots, so we wouldn't open their absentee ballots. And then on the Monday and Tuesday before of the election, we will open any ballots that came in during the early voting period and start scanning them in. And much like early voting, when we scan in the absentee ballots, nobody will know the results of these ballots until election night. So that is kind of how that's going to go. It's a big change. It's also going to remove all the challenges that happen to absentee ballots after the election. So that's a very pro-voter piece of this legislation. No longer will teams of lawyers be able to descend on boards of elections after the election to file ridiculous and unscrupulous challenges that will keep people from, having their votes counted. So this is a very important, and I believe hopefully she will sign this bill, and it will be a sea change. And even though we're not going to have no-fault absentees next year, it is important for the people who are voting absentee to be able to have their votes counted on election night. And of course, any ballots that come in after election day will be counted later. There will still be some ballots after election day, but changing the way this bill is done, we will have the vast majority of elections decided on election night now. The next bill is the Make Voting Easier in New York law. This will expand early voting in New York. Currently, we have to have one site for every 50,000 registered voters. That is going to go down to one site for every 30,000 registered voters, except for in counties over 500,000 population, it will be one for every 40,000 registered voters. So what that means in Onondaga County, our 6 sites will grow to 10 sites next year. We will be mandated to have 10 sites. Also important in that, for the larger counties, it's removing the artificial maximum of minimum voting sites. There used to be I believe it was 15, and then it was raised a little bit. You can't have more than 15. You can't mandate more than 15 early voting sites. And in big counties like Nassau, New York City, this meant that there was always a negotiation between the Republicans and Democratic commissioners about how many early voting sites they would have, because the Democrats would still want to have one for every 50,000 or one for every 30,000. But because that 15 maximum was in there, anytime you went over 15, it was a horse trading situation. So the big counties are going to see an increase in early voting sites well beyond what might be happening in even the smaller counties, because they have that artificial max cap. And this is really targeted at Long Island. We saw a lot of issues down there in Suffolk and Nassau counties where Republicans were blocking the number of early voting sites from growing because of that artificial cap. And you even see it in New York City. So we're going to see an increase of early voting sites there. And then 2 other bills that aren't as controversial but just as important are a bill that will keep the absentee ballot portal, the portal that you have online with the Board of Elections, that made it very easy to request an absentee ballot. That was a temporary portal over the last couple of years, and this will make it a permanent function of the State Board of Elections. I can tell you from an election administration standpoint, that portal was invaluable. It saved us so much time and energy in processing absentee ballots. I really hope that she'll sign the bill making that permanent. And then also a absentee ballot tracking system to be run statewide by the State Board of Elections. This is very important because if this is signed as well, then any issues about people knowing where their absentee ballots are will be resolved on a statewide basis, which means if you applied for an absentee ballot in a county, and you'll be able to know whether they received your application, whether they mailed you your ballot, and then if you mail that ballot back to us, you'll be able to see whether we received it or not. This is very important information, especially in light of the change of the absentee ballots, but also just with the problems that we've had with the U.S. mail. This will give people a surety that their ballots have been received by the Board of Elections. So these 4 pieces of legislation that are before Governor Hochul, hopefully by this time next week, I'll be reporting that they are all signed. These are going to change New York elections in a very dramatic and important way. So, it's never too late for legislation in New York. Well, that's not true. December 26th, it becomes too late. So it's never too late until it is. And so all these bills being called up is a hopeful sign that Governor Hochul is going to sign these and have them ready for us for next year's elections. And it's important for her to sign them now, and the state board can work on regulations so by our June primary next year, we will be ready to go with all of these new exciting tools for New York voters. I also promised an update on redistricting. I always do. Apparently here in Onondaga County, it is the last time we talked, we were waiting to hear about what the process was. Now we know that on December 21st, Onondaga County is having a public hearing at 11:30 a.m. for maps that were released last Friday. It's at the Onondaga County reapportionment website. There were 3 maps submitted to be local laws, and the intention of the county GOP is to vote on those on December 21st. 2 maps are by Republicans, one by Democrats. We're not really sure why the Republicans submitted 2 different maps, but they have been. I am planning on doing a wonky Wednesday tomorrow, outlining the differences between these 3 different proposals. I've been looking at them over the weekend and over the last couple of days, and they are different, obviously, very different. The Democratic proposal is much in line with the ones that that came out of the Reapportionment Commission, although there were some minor adjustments to continue to have a majority black district in OCL 16. Both the Republicans' map fails to do that, even though that's why they said they were going to veto their 2.0 maps to address this, but it doesn't seem they have addressed it. In fact, they've only made minor pushes to get more African Americans into OCL 16, but they're still a minority in that district. This is a major change from the last 30 years, and something that I believe is a Federal Voting Rights Act. But also, they are continuing their assault on the suburbs. They are dividing communities in DeWitt, Geddes, Salina, and of course, the city of Syracuse. And they are making interesting choices out in Manlius as well, and Camillus. So these are things that they don't seem to look right to the eye. And today there was a third party had uploaded all 3 maps to the Dave Wasserman reapportionment or redistricting app. It's a free app being used. It actually is being used by Spokane, Washington, to actually draw their maps out in Spokane. But it's a map that citizens are using to evaluate maps. It's an app that used to evaluate maps on the state, county, and federal level. As people are going through redistricting, it was made by Dave Wasserman, who's the foremost expert on redistricting in the country, and someone who I've been following on Twitter for a long time. And if you don't follow him, go ahead and do so. But those maps were uploaded, and the nonpartisan metrics that are used to determine the viability of maps, I believe the 4 metrics are minority representation, compactness, proportionality, and competitiveness. On all 4 of those metrics, the Democratic maps 3.0 are better, demonstrably, than the Republican maps and the old maps. And the Republican maps that are put in, some of the metrics are actually worse than the old maps. They've actually made it worse. So it's a good way, while this isn't legal proof, it's a good way to kind of see why so many of us are up in arms about these maps. And the county Democratic caucus has put forward a proposal to again continue to slow down the process, take all the time we need to get consensus correct maps, and that will be voted on Friday the 21st. And if that fails, which it most likely will, the Republicans will then vote on which maps, or the whole legislature, but it's dominated by an 11-6 split. The Republicans will make a choice of which maps to choose. I still believe it's important for the public to be heard on this. So 11:30 a.m. on the 21st, you should go to the public hearing. I don't believe there's an option to mail in. I don't believe there's an option not to be there in person. And yes, they are going to vote on it just an hour later. So will the public's input be impacted on the maps themselves? No, but you do have 3 maps to advocate for. And you can go and advocate for one of those maps or advocate for them to slow down the process and come up with consensus maps. Now, a lot of people ask, well, what's the next step? Well, if the county exec does not veto it, if the county exec signs it, then the next step will be a decision on whether to go forward with legal process. There will be many groups looking into that. The Democratic caucus of legislators could do it themselves. Citizens can do it individually. Good government groups like NYCLU, New York Civil Liberties Union, Citizens Common Cause, League of Women Voters has in the past looked at going ahead and suing on maps across the country. Whether that will happen here remains to be seen, but it will take patience, because this is not something that will just happen overnight. If they sign these maps by January 1st, the opponents of these maps actually have until March of next year to get a decision on them. So, it's a 15-month process. And if you're going to go to court on something like this, you're going to take your time, get it done right, and make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position possible. You have to get experts. You got to raise money. You got to, prepare filings. These are things that take a long time. So don't expect that, there will be a lawsuit filed, but I do think you could expect news on whether people are going forward with lawsuits based on, the maps that in their final form, when and if they are signed. I'm still hopeful that I believe the best rule is that the legislature should not be drawing their own maps. They should be sending it back to the Reapportionment Commission, which is called for in the charter, and they should send it back with a directive that the Reapportionment Commission should come up with a consensus map, and then we could truly negotiate on these maps. I can tell you that did not happen last time. It hasn't happened throughout this entire process. The Republicans have put forward the maps that they want to put forward, and only after tremendous public outcry did they have a veto of their map. But even then, they're not changing their maps all that much. And they are continuing to do this, splitting up of the city, splitting up of DeWitt, reducing minority impact, and in the inner city districts, and splitting up Geddes and Salina. So we are seeing a full-out continued assault on on these maps, and it is not something where they have actually listened to the public on this, in my opinion. So finally, what do I got coming up this week? Well, tomorrow, Wonky Wednesday, I'll hoping to release around this time an analysis I've done of the redistricting maps. And then in the coming weeks, I'll continue to do my analysis from the general election. Last week I did the turnout, and it is quite telling about who turned out, who didn't turn out, and why we saw such a massive drop. In the coming weeks, I'll be doing early voting, absentees, all of that as well. My Zoom with Zarnies are back. I have on there a redistricting one with Jeff Weiss from the New York Law University. He's one of the foremost experts on redistricting. Very telling. We recorded that interview before the maps were released, and I can tell you that that is a very informative interview. Go check it out. And finally, this week I will have Susan Lerner, my good friend Susan Lerner of Common Cause. We'll be talking New York elections. We'll be talking redistricting, I'm sure, and we'll be talking anything else we want to talk about. So if there's some things you want me to talk to her about, please let me know. And so then finally, I will. I haven't really been doing my Ask Me Anythings on Saturdays. I may wait until the new year on those, but I'll get those back. I've been pretty busy with the holidays and my family on Saturdays, so I haven't had time to devote to it, and I didn't want to put it out there if I wasn't ready for it. So, but I hope all of you are having a safe and happy holiday season. I cannot forget that Governor Hochul did issue a masking mandate. It started yesterday. So if you are indoors at a public space, you must wear a mask, whether you're vaccinated or not, unless that facility requires only vaccinations in their staff and patrons to be in there, and then those patrons can go without a mask. I don't know many facilities doing that. This is about stopping the spread still. And yes, the Omicron variant and the Delta variant can still have breakthrough cases through the vaccinated, and our numbers are still high. Our hospitals are still coping with high levels of hospitalizations and deaths, and even locally. And also, what is not being made is the case that by wearing masks, by going back to the masking mandate, we may actually be able to keep these small businesses open. Because if the numbers continue to rise, then we were looking at shutdowns and not masking mandates. And if we want to keep our businesses open through the winter, if we want to be able to go to the theaters and see shows or go to restaurants, then we have to wear these masks to stop the spread and slow down the spread, so we continue to operate in a sense of normalcy. And please go get your vaccine. And if you've already gotten your vaccine, get your booster. And please wear a mask in public. It is now the law. Protect those around you. Protect yourself. Upgrade if you can, think about upgrading to the K95 mask. I did that myself. I bought a whole bunch for my family, and we're wearing K95 masks now because that gives me a little bit of protection. Not just others from me, but me from others as well. So I want you to be safe. I want you to be healthy in this holiday season. And I really, really hope to see you sometime soon. So take care, and we'll check in next week in next week's Commissioner in Car. Bye-bye.